Here we go again. Time for another video. I'm in mid-session and the stacks are starting to get a little deep. So I thought I would turn on my video software. Thought this might actually make for a more interesting video since the stacks are deeper. And I also find that making these videos helps me to focus on my play. When I'm explaining my thinking out loud, it keeps me just paying attention to the action and what's happening, so I'm not as distracted. Usually when I'm playing, I'm also watching a YouTube video or scrolling Twitter or reading some kind of article, but I find I'm playing better by focusing entirely on the action and what my opponents are doing. So here we are. As usual, I'm playing 6-card Omaha high-low, playing on blue stacks. And both tables that I'm playing are 25-50. This multi-way table here, this 5-handed table, is a 20 big blind max buy-in. With no ante. And this heads-up table is a 20 big blind max buy-in with a 30 ante. That's pretty substantial. So on this table, we're pretty deep here. We each have 60 big blinds. We've built up some stacks. And on this table, the same player and I are again getting pretty deep. And the other players are mostly at starting stacks. So there's a lot of money to be made. And two different dynamics. And already played some big pots, and there's going to be more big pots to come. So I'll talk a little bit about my general strategy for both these games. Oh, I hope it's not too distracting that I'm playing two tables. It's very easy for me to follow the action on both tables, but unfortunately BlueStacks and just the app that I'm using to play, the app that this club is a member of, doesn't allow me to set it up so I can see both tables simultaneously. So as a result, I just keep flipping one table to the other, which is very easy for me to keep straight in my mind, but I imagine it's more difficult for someone viewing this video. So hopefully whoever's watching this video is able to follow along, but I'll do my best to narrate as we go. Hopefully that's helpful. Here on this table I've got a high-only hand. Don't love these high-only hands, but I'll peel a flop with this. The guy I'm playing against misplays a ton of hands. And deep, he's really susceptible to overplaying his hands deep and getting it in behind. So here I flop top pair, which is the nuts. Got a turn that completes the straight draw. Ace 10 and 10 9, so two straight draws and a flush draw. So I'm not leading out. He's betting the pot. He'll do this sometimes as a bluff, but he probably has a straight here. But I'm still going to peel just because I have top set, so any paired board and I'll have the better full house. Not what I was looking for. So of course here it's not too hard to imagine him having ace 10. So I think I've given up on this board. And and he's betting 2/3 of the pot, which doesn't tell me a lot, but I do think he probably has ace-10 here and got lucky on that turn, so I'm just going to lay my hand down. Too bad. Actually, I'm kind of glad that I didn't bet the flop, even though I ended up giving him a free card. Actually, I'm just glad to see that turn, and then I think I ended up putting in less money by seeing that turn and not inflating the pot too much on the flop. I would have liked to have paired that board on the river just in case he also had, you know, a 2-pair that became a worse boat. So here he's potting again, pre-flopping with the antes in the middle. His pot is a little over 4x the big blind. And my hand is good enough that I could 3-bet him, but I'm just going to call and see the flop. I'll talk about why in a second. I'm really not too concerned with punishing his play or being GTO. I'm really playing an exploitive strategy that works well, in my opinion, with these deep stacks. So now, on this flop, I've got the nut low draw, and it's pretty much counterfeit proof because I got ace deuce 4 with the 3 on board, and I have a flush draw. I don't have the nut flush draw, and in 6 card that really does make a difference. And I think either raising or calling here is acceptable. I'm just gonna call actually, and then make a decision. Not a good turn. Well, actually, I just see now that I got the nut club draw. So now I have 2 flush draws, 1 to the nuts. Still have my nut low draw. Have a little gut shot straight draw. Don't have anything right now to show down. I have a pair of 4s. So I'm not folding. I think checking and calling is fine. I'm actually going to bet almost the pot here. And I don't think there's many hands in his range that he's playing that he's folding now. I think he's going to call or jam here, but I'm not folding at any point. So, well, there. I turned my hand into some bluff equity, some fold equity, and pretty happy with that. I wouldn't have minded seeing a river with the hand that I have. When he folds, I'm pretty sure I had the best diamond draw as well as the best club draw, but of course, if a heart or a spade comes on the river, I have basically no high, and we could have had the same low draw easily, so I think that he does peel there with ace deuce, but he almost certainly had a better high hand than me, so I'm pretty happy that he folded, and I'm really happy that I didn't jam it in on this flop, because I think he's way more likely to call a check raise or just jam everything in and just gamble it up, and then he realizes all of his showdown value. So as strong as my hand was on that flop, I like, especially seeing how it turned out. I am being a little results oriented, but I think that just calling and then firing on decent turns is a good strategy. Just kind of delaying the semi bluff one street, because if he doesn't like that turn, which doesn't seem like it would help anyone really, you know, he doesn't. I might be preventing him from realizing the equity he has in the hand that he would get if the money all went in on the flop. That was a pretty long explanation. It's a pretty basic poker point, but that's a good example of 6 card, how it plays out in 6 card. And I've said before, my strategy is to try to minimize the total gamble and to see more flops and more turns and try to get the money in more on the turn or even the river when possible, as opposed to on the pre-flop or flop action. It's hard to get away from gambling when you're playing 6-card Omaha, but that is kind of an idea. And that last hand was an example where I pretty much had to get it all in when I had the 2 flush draws and the nut low draw. I would have been pretty happy to get it in. So here I've got a gut shot, not a good one, and a king high flush draw. I think I'm just going to lay this down. When he check raises, and I had a pair of kings, but when he check raises, I think more often than not he has the ace high flush draw or a set. I'd be kind of surprised. He could have had some kind of wrap too, I guess, but that's really that's more what I would kind of hope he has when I call than what I actually believe he has. This hand is probably going to get expensive for me. I've got top and bottom with the nut low draw, but he raised before the flop, so I think he's going to have ace deuce a lot here. I think he's going to have spades a lot here. It really hurts that I don't have any spades. I have 1 spade as a blocker, but I don't have a draw. I think I'm just going to pot it though, and hopefully if he doesn't have a big spade draw, maybe he gets away from it. That's what I was trying to do. But I think a lot of times... Oh, that's a bad turn. I think a lot of times I just have to get it in there. I think my low is good, so I'm calling on this board here. Oh, no, I was totally crushed. He had the wheel. Wow, so we went check, check here. Now I made my nut low, but he might also have the nut low, and I've got 2 pair. I am a little worried about being quartered here. Usually with a nut low and 2 not great 2 pair, I would consider potting. The idea being trying to get him to fold, you know, if he has like a king 5, like a little bit of a better low or high hand than me. But I'm a little worried here about getting quartered. But I don't think he has a set here ever. The way that he checked the turn. So now he's betting into me, so I'm definitely calling with the nut low and my 2 pair. Hopefully I'm not quartered. I think I'm probably getting half. And there might even be there's probably some cases where I'm quartering him. Okay, so he rivered a straight. He really didn't have much. You know, he had a straight draw on the flop. So that's interesting. I wonder if I pot the turn, what he does. He had 1 pair and a straight draw. Pretty big straight draw. But it should be noted I had lots of ways to scoop him too. Oh, I wasn't looking at my hand properly. I didn't even realize I had trips. This is not a good hand to raise. So now I've really played this poorly, and I'm maybe compounding my mistake, but I am going to try to take this down the flop. I was fortunate that worked out because I did not have a good hand. So here I've got a bad flush draw, bottom pair, which is basically useless. Well, I have pocket king, so that's something. And then a really small, not great low draw, but he's playing really passively, so this is a funny hand where I really don't know where I'm at all, and even what cards I'm hoping for. But I'm going to bet this flop, hope that he just folds and gives up whatever equity he has in the hand, and improvise now. Make a judgment call on the turn. So that's an interesting turn. My kings probably aren't good anymore, if they were. My deuce 4 looks better, because now the only low that's beating me is deuce 3. Not that there is a low, I'm saying if a low comes, but I feel a little better about my low draw. And since he's playing pretty weak, I'm going to keep firing. Pot would have been okay, but I think I can maybe bet a little smaller than pot and get the same effect. And now I've got a really bad flush. Oh, and he checks. So when he checks, I never really put him on the ace-high flush draw, and he probably doesn't have a jack-high flush draw, but he could have the other flush draws, and I don't expect him to fold here. So, and I think when he doesn't have a flush here, he has missed straights, so I'm just checking behind with my 6-high flush. And what did he have? He had a set, and he just played it really passively. Maybe he didn't like his low draw, or he was worried about me having a bigger set, but so I got pretty lucky there to suck out on him. But it is worth noting that in 6 card you always have a lot of different combo draws, like any low card. Well, not the deuce, because that would counterfeit me, but I had the best low draw, so when the low comes, I'm gonna get half the pot. If the offsuit king had come, I would have had, whoops, timed out here with top set. Oh, that's a great turn, obviously, when you have top set. So now it's just pot, and I have no low, and I'm just really hoping that he'll fold. That he'll fold if he has a bad low. Otherwise, we're splitting this pot because I have no low. So he's calling with probably not a great low. Oh well. He was hoping his bad full house was good, and he ended up winning there with an 8 low. I think there's better players and thinking players who can fold that hand. But these guys I'm playing against, I have notes on all of them, and they all love those bottom full houses. And I want to talk about this hand a little bit. I think this is a really good spot to bluff. I've got the second nut low draw. The low's not there yet. But with the ace of clubs in my hand, it's kind of like the old ace trick that we all know and love, where he just doesn't have as many reasons. He's not necessarily going to put me on an ace-high flush draw, but he just doesn't have as many reasons to chase, when I'm blocking that ace-high flush draw. And other than the king-high flush draw in 6-card Omaha, you just don't really chase a lot of flush draws. So for him to call there, he really needs... He's definitely going to call if he has ace-deuce. We know that, because that's just how these guys play. They just chase every ace-deuce no matter what. But for him to call there, he really needs the straight or a set at least. So that bet, that kind of semi-bluff, is just going to work all those extra times, because he's not going to be... It just removes one more call hand from his range. That ace-high flush draw is a big swath of his calling range. So when I've got that ace of clubs in my hand, I just think it's a great hand to just try to take it down right away with. So deuce 3, 4, 5, I actually think it's kind of a playable low, but not, I don't want to play it 4 ways out of position, and this 8-7 doesn't help at all, so I'm just mucking this hand. And when I say deuce 3, 4, 5, I mean if I just have deuce 3, I don't play it. and even deuce 3-4 I don't think is very good, but deuce 3-4-5, you just have that much more chance of making the low by the river, or making the nut low. You can kind of turn the tables a little bit, when the counterfeit cards come, when those wheel cards come. Someone is excited about their ace deuce 3 or ace deuce 4, and then an ace comes on the turn, that kind of thing. Yeah, this is kind of a classic spot, top and bottom, runner, low draw. Stacks are so deep, I don't want to commit a lot of money to it. I'm probably going to fold to a bet. If he bets half pot, I'll probably call. Oh, that's an interesting turn. Hurts my low draw, but gives me the nut flush draw. And I don't think he checks ace 9. Or sorry, ace jack on that flop. So now I'm more confident, unless he turned a set of 2s, I'm more confident that I have the best hand right now, and I've got that club draw. My low draw is not very good, so I'm just going to pot it. And hopefully, I just want to take it down right here. That's what I didn't want. That 6 shouldn't really hurt my high hand, unless he has pocket 6s, obviously. There's no straights. But I have no low, and he's going to call with whatever silly low he was chasing with. I'm going to bet 2/3 of the pot, and sometimes, that was really fortunate for me, so he was chasing something else. I do think it's worth betting there. And not bluff catching, just because so many times he's going to get half the pot. Like, for all we know, he did have, a 7-8 in his hand. Like, if he had 7-8 10 queen, just as one example, or just any two dangling low cards, like if he had a 3-8 or a 4-7, that he would fold when I make a bet on that river. Because if it just goes check, so often I'm just giving him half the pot for what I consider no reason. Well, the reason being because I'm afraid of getting quartered or scooped there, but that is why I bet that flop, and it worked out. And sometimes you're bluffing with the best hand, obviously. But I like to keep the pressure on my opponents, and in that spot specifically, I just don't want him getting half the pot with some terrible low. And if there is a bit of metagame with these guys, I don't mind when he calls. And sees that I'm betting, with the not best high hand. I think, my reasoning, if you listen throughout the hand of how I arrived to being confident in my ace-9, I think that's sound reasoning, but he might not perceive it that way. He might just see that I've got, he doesn't even have top 2, and he's betting. He bet 3 streets, or 2 streets, I bet. And he doesn't even have a low, and he can't even scoop. If he's calling with a low, that's how he's going to perceive it. And so I don't mind when he calls it, whether his low is good or bad, and then sees that, because I'd like to think that there's going to be boards in the future, rivers in the future, where I'm going to bet, and I've got, the nut high and the nut low, or the nut high and the second nut low, and he's going to be in a spot remembering times when I've bet rivers with, only 2 pair and no low, and he's going to talk himself into making a bad call, trying to, once again, get half the pot. Okay, so here I missed everything, and the board paired. And he's checking. Really tempting to fire here because I have no showdown value at all. But I don't block any of the hands that I want to fold, so I'm just giving up. see how bad that was. Yeah, he had king 7. He wasn't folding. So that was a good no bet by me. But yeah, just to finish that thought, I think, you know, you make most of your money in big pots where you're scooping in this game. And if you can get people calling you, feeling like on those rivers, they have to call you. Everybody quit this game. That's so funny. As one player quits, they all quit. We went, in 4 hands, we went from 5 players to just me sitting there. But yeah, if you can get players calling you on rivers with calling big bets with far from the nuts, you know, that's really how you're going to make most of your money. Because in this game you don't have to wait that long to show up with nutted hands. Here's a good little hand. The only problem with this hand is the paired 3s. That's not a good pair. You don't want bottom set. And just makes it, having 1 3 in your hand just makes it less likely that you're going to make a low. So I started with a great low draw, but then the board comes ace deuce, so now my low is 3-8, which is terrible. But if he doesn't have deuce 4 here, or sorry, 3-4 here, it's kind of hard for him to continue. So just firing just to take it down before it goes any further. This other table where everybody quit, it's funny because one of the players was this guy right here, and he had thousands in front of him. Just gonna call here with my double suited aces. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that other table in a minute, but right now let's just focus on this hand. So I've got top set. The problem is there's 2 low cards on the board. Now there's 3 low cards. So I was planning to just check call there and then look for a safe turn. I did not get a safe turn. I still have the best high hand, but I don't have a low. So whatever low he has is now a good low for him. And I don't want to put all the money in. So now my hand is a flush and I have no low. Well, I do have a low. I have a live 4, which is pretty useless. And I don't regret that I didn't bet the flop or the turn, because I don't want to play a big hand knowing that on the turn he probably already has half the pot locked up, and on the river, you know, my hand's not very strong. So I would have played this hand differently if he had if there had been only 1 low card on the flop. That's interesting. My live 4 there was good. If there was only 1 low card on the flop, I play that hand differently, because my chance of scooping is much bigger. And as it is, he turned out having basically the opposite of what I thought he was going to have. But the result was still kind of the same. And I just feel like if I pot that flop, it's so easy for him to call with our deep stacks. He's getting good implied odds, and you can have massive draws in 6 card. It's so easy to have, you know, the low draw and a wrap or some kind of straight draw or whatever he has. And then there's so few good turn cards for me. They're all going to be bad turn cards for me. And then I have to either just bet blindly, not knowing where I'm at, or check call, not knowing where I'm at. So I'm happy to just keep those pots small, and I'm really confident that when I have the nuts on the turn, or if my hand stays good through to the river, that I'll be able to get in as much as I want. So here I've got a really good low draw. I don't have any kind of high draw at all. I just have this pair of fives. But I actually think he's going to give up on a lot of my bets. So he's peeling. And now I've made my nut low. And if he checks, I'll be confident he does not have the nut low. He does not. I don't think he has ace deuce, and I can't even be counterfeited because I got my ace deuce 3. So if he's got a straight, he's going to call down for half the pot. But anytime he doesn't have a straight, I don't think he can call. So I'm going to bet this turn, and I'm going to pot the river, I think. Well, now I do have a straight. So that's one of the miracles of 6-card Omaha, is you do often have these runner draws. So I still think I got the low locked up. It's possible that he has ace deuce, but I'm still betting. And if he doesn't have a flush, then he just folds. So in that case, I probably was bluffing with the best hand. I don't think my pair of fives was good on the turn, but my straight, was probably good on the river. He didn't even think about calling. But even if I didn't make that straight, my plan was to probably pot the river, just to get him off. If he has one pair, an ace queen or pocket kings or something like that, pocket aces, just want him to fold. And definitely, if he has a really small straight, any hands that he would consider folding, I can bet really confident that I know I'm getting at least a quarter of the pot, and I'm almost certainly getting half the pot. So it's kind of like a free bluff. If you know you're going to get half the pot, or you're 80% sure you're getting half the pot, just so easy to just put the maximum pressure on him as whatever his high hand is kind of starts off looking good and just gets worse and worse, almost certainly. That's just kind of the way poker is, right? When you flop a good hand, what's good on the flop is almost usually never good on the river. And again, it's not GTO, it's not unexploitable what I'm doing, but my strategy is to keep the pot small until I know exactly where I'm at, or I feel really confident about where I'm at, and then get them big. And I just trust that the pots can kind of spiral out of control on these guys, and they're still going to keep chasing, just looking, one way, chasing for a low when, there's already a really set high hand on the board, or they're chasing for some high when there's already a low on the board that they don't get. So I hope that makes sense. So I like the cards in my hand. I don't like the suits. I don't like that I have 4 hearts. I love ace deuce 4 5. What a great low draw I'm gonna have. I hate pocket deuces, and this is exactly why I hate pocket deuces. This isn't a good flop for me. If he has any 6, he's gonna have 10 outs or more against me. Now I have the nut low. And having a full house is better than not having a full house. But without the nut low, I wouldn't even really want to bet this. But I do have my nut low, so I feel confident betting this. At worst, I'm getting a quarter, and I'm usually getting half there with a good chance to scoop with my full house. So, but just on its own, that deuce uh, that deuces full of sixes is a lot of trouble. In 4-card Omaha, maybe, but in 6-card Omaha, so likely that he has a 6, and then when he does have a 6, he's got 5 other cards in his hand to try to pair if he doesn't already have 6 deuce. I wasn't so worried that he had 6 deuce, but any 6, he's not going to fold any 6, and then he's got 5 other cards in his hand to pair, so I'm not even really a favorite. Oh yeah, they just closed the other table, and I was going to talk about that other table. These guys, they like to gamble, and they like to play these big stacks. Or, sorry, they like to play these short stacks and gamble. So I think that's one reason why they quit. Well, now I'm going to get back to that because I'm going to talk about this hand. So I flopped the nut low. And the nut flush draw, so obviously all the money is going to go in, never getting away from this, and I turn the nuts with the nut low. Well, this hand's just playing itself. You know, I would talk about different ways to play this hand, but he's already put himself all in. So this hand just played itself, and he's not even getting, oh, well, he got lucky on the river. So he gets back half. You know, which is, that's just the way this game goes, you know. I mean, he made a huge mistake to chase that. He didn't even have a low. He had a 7 low, and to put in that much money when there's already a low, the low's already qualified. There's already 3 low cards on board, so I just think that he made a huge mistake. I know that he also had a flush draw, but just 8 high flush is almost never going to be good. 7 high low is basically never going to be good. I guess he played it that way because he flopped a straight, but I think that's a terrible way to play a flopped straight. I think because the low is already out there, I think he's got to just check call or even check fold sometimes. And we saw he got bailed out. He only had 4 outs. And if he doesn't hit one of those 4 outs, he's getting scooped. And again, the most important thing is there was really no way for him to scoop. He put in $2,000 almost to win just half of what was already in there on the flop, which wasn't very much. So those are the spots you look for in this game, and it doesn't upset me that he hit his 4-outer, because that's all you can ask for, is to just get into those spots where you're basically free rolling. It's not really the same as a free roll, but I've got half the pot locked up. And he's hoping to suck out just to get his money back, not even to get $1 of what was originally mine. So would have been nice to scoop him right there, don't get me wrong, but as long as I get into enough of those situations in a day or in a week, I'm going to come out way ahead. And that is why you'll see me check a lot of hands like that on the flop. And you'll see me bet weaker hands than that on the flop. But that's totally different. Those are hands that I have basically no intention. If you see me bet the flop, I'm either going to be super strong, or I'm betting a hand that I have no intention of getting all the money in. I'm betting on that flop just to try to take it down immediately if it's an uncoordinated board, or I know something from the pre-flop action about what his hand might be and what his range is, and my range looks better than his range, you know, just basic poker. Then I'll bet, but I'm usually going to give up or fold if I get played back at. And there are another group of hands where I kind of can bet the flop and then be speculative about how I'm playing, depending on what the turn cards and action is. But hands like what he had, where you flop that straight, but you're just vulnerable to whether it's redraws or low draws, I'm almost always just completely giving up. Or just checking and keeping the pot small. Don't like this hand. Aces. Suited ace, but 4 clubs. Okay, so this is really basic. There's not going to be a low this hand because we got 3 high cards on the flop. Have a nut flush draw, which doesn't change a lot. Basically, it's just, does he have a king or he doesn't? Or pocket jacks, obviously. I can bet here. He's never going to fold any king. So I could bet now just to take it down, but basically I'm either pretty far ahead or way, way, way behind. I'm just going to check. The only thing that can really, well, that's one of the few cards that can hurt me. He also could have made a straight. So now my game of does he have a king or not is, does he have a king or a jack or not? And I think I could peel this or fold it. And I'm just going to fold it. If there was a hand to call there with, I had it. I mean, without having the king or the jack, but it's just not part of my overall, my meta strategy against this guy. Bluff catching isn't, it's not where I make most of my money against this guy. And that again reminds me of what I was going to say about the other table. I think these players, they like the little stacks and they like gambling and just being able to jam it in and not have that be a huge mistake. So I think one reason why they quit when they did is because they just want to squirrel away that money, and maybe they'd play again with smaller stacks. So I might actually, now that table's closed, I might actually reopen the same stakes so that everybody can sit down again with fresh stacks. We'll see if anybody wants to continue playing. So here I'm just going to look at a speculative flop because I got an ace deuce. I ended up flopping top and bottom with the nut flush draw. My low draw is terrible. That's what I get for playing a 9-8-8 hand. Now my low draw is my deuce 8. But definitely going to look at a turn. Okay, so now I have a bad straight draw. If my ace 6 was good on the flop, I'm losing now to ace 10. And of course a set of 10s. There's no low there though, which I think is good. So I'm actually firing again, little semi-bluff here. Possible that I have the best hand with my ace 6. He's calling, so... Oh, wow. Terrible. Because now any king with any Broadway card is now the new nuts. And I don't think it's worth me bluffing because I have the second nuts. I guess 9 king is the second nuts. And he's potting. Well, he probably called on the turn with king, queen, jack, something like that. So I can confidently give up. So that didn't go very well. And again, I did have a straight there, but not trying to bluff catch that guy. And also when he bets pot, I don't think he's bluffing very often. I don't think he's balancing his pot bets there on the river. I had 3 pair, 10, 10, 5, 5, 4, 4, but it's not a good hand. I don't want a set of 5s or a set of 4s ever on the flop. Not good hands. 8, 7, 7, 6, 6. Yeah, he's just stealing. He's just firing, taking down those blinds and antes. He's got his stack back up. Don't like this hand. Deuce, deuce. Terrible pair to have. I guess the only thing interesting about it is you're blocking ace deuce for him, but that's not enough for me to play it right now. Nope. I'll just call his min raise. Don't really love my hand, but okay, so I got bottom 2 and a gut shot. He only min raised though, which I find a little peculiar. Now he's potting. I wonder if I call here. Obviously I want a 10, but what do I do if I call here and I hit a queen or a 6? And I don't have a low draw, so even though that I called speculatively and I seem to have hit a decent flop, I'm still folding. Wow, he folded one. Must have had trips. But part of my strategy here is I don't mind letting him run over me pre-flop. Knowing that I can outplay him on most flops and turns. Okay, he's showing a lot of weakness here, so this is just a little standard C-bet. These turns keep hurting my low. Went from having a not very good low to now having a bad low. I'm not worried about him having ace deuce the way that he's playing, but ace 5 is ahead of me, ace 6 is ahead of me, deuce 5 is ahead of me. But having said all that, I think he's more likely chasing clubs, or he has 9-10, so I am firing again. Oh, that's not... very interesting. I think if he has a set... I think I'd hear from him more on the flop or the turn if he's got a set. So now I'm very tempted to bluff this river. The problem with bluffing this river is he doesn't fold if he has ace deuce. And I have no showdown value at all. I'm doing it. Just total madman bluff. Somehow gets through. Well, whoa! Wish I could say that I was brilliant. Might have just been lucky there. I wish the replayer was easier to see. Time to magnify your screen, people. So he didn't re-raise pre-flop. He didn't re-raise the flop. He didn't raise the flop. He didn't raise the turn. And I just feel, just this player in particular, I feel like he almost always does with ace deuce. So I don't put him on ace deuce. That's the first thing. So I don't, if he has ace deuce, he's never folding. He's not worried about getting quartered. So that's the first question I ask myself is how often does he have the nut low here? And he's just going to sink his teeth into it no matter what. The second thing is I think he raises the flop or check raises the turn with any of his sets. Unless maybe not, you know, a set of threes. But when that 8 comes, I think his full houses now are Jack 8 and 8-4. Oh, God. Here we go again. Well, I think today's my lucky day. Of course, I had a good hand on the turn, but there was so many terrible cards that can come on the river, and this one, I mean, I would have preferred a paired board, but, well, maybe not even. Who knows? This hand now, I've got the nut straight. I've got a terrible low, but just betting the pot. See what happens. I wanted to talk more about that bluff. This one. So again, sometimes he's going to have Jack 8, sometimes he's going to have 8-4 there, but I think a lot more often he's got the ace high club draw. He's got 9-10, 9-10 queen, maybe 5, 6, 7. And I'm not blocking any of the boats on this hand, but I'm also not blocking any of the clubs or that 9. Well, I do have a 9 in my hand and I do have a queen in my hand, so I guess I was blocking some of the straight draws, but I do think there was some reasoning to that suicide bluff I made on that river, and somehow it got through. Well, the lows just aren't working for me today. He checked the flop, so I don't think he has the nut flush draw, but I'm just not gonna thread this one. Now I'm really tempted. I'm really thinking it's gonna work, but I guess I have some showdown value, so I'm just gonna check down here. Well, I guess I could have fired and tried to get him off that 7 high flush, but so that was that hand. There was another hand in there. This one, where I fired the river with a 3-6 low and my nut straight. And I guess I could have bet a little bit less for value. I wonder if there are hands I want him to fold. Like if he has a deuce 6. Or if he has a 3-6. No, but he's not going to ever fold a 3-6 as the second nut straight. Maybe I should have slowed down on that river and bet a little bit less for value. He folded so quickly, I don't think he was even thinking about it, but maybe he had 8, 9, 10 in his hand. Okay, here we go. Another ace deuce. Not a good flop. No pair. Set of fives. I guess that's a great turn. So now my low draw is live again. And set of fives is almost certainly the best high hand right now. So I'm just going to pot it. Make him pay. If he's got a straight draw, heart draw, if he's got his own ace deuce, low draw. He did raise before the flop. There's a lot wrong with this hand, but I think it's definitely playable. Actually, I'm going to limp in with this hand. Just mix it up a little bit. He doesn't seem that interested in this hand, so we'll just try to do a little bet here. Okay, he's got some piece. Oh, that's an interesting card, that deuce. The board is so uncoordinated that the only draw he can really have is like 10 jack queen. But I don't think he's got ace deuce. So I'm firing again. Just bluff after bluff after bluff. I have no showdown value. He called so quickly. I think this one I have to give up. Well, I was right. He didn't have ace deuce. I don't know if he's going to fold that jack deuce. He was obviously calling to hit a jack 10 or a 7. Improve his hand. It's very interesting. If I pot the river, is he folding? So he had a gut shot. He's looking for a queen. He's got the trips. I think his call on the flop is pretty bad, but that's the way he plays. Here we go. Nut flush and second nut low. So I'm gonna take a little risk, give him a free. Was risking giving him a free card if he's got, you know, 2 pair or a set, or if he's got ace deuce, giving him free equity, but he bet the pot. I think just calling is fine, but I'm gonna basically just click back at him. And this is the pot we're gonna build. Oh, and he folded. That's fine. Got an extra 480 out of him. I think also just calling there and getting the money in on the turn is acceptable, but also I felt confident he was gonna call me. If he had like ace deuce or ace 3, chases low, or if he had, you know, a smaller flush draw or a set of jacks, set of 7s, I'm pretty wide as 7, so I'm blocking the sets of 7s, but I also expect him to get frustrated because he had more chips than I did when this video started, and now he's coming back down to like a starting stack, so I think he's going to get frustrated and start gambling with me soon. Well, I flopped 3 pair, which isn't very good. 2 backdoor flush draws. He used a time extension. Let's see what he wants to do with this hand. This isn't a great hand to go all in with on the flop, because if he has jack 9 and any kind of straight draw, then I'm crushed. I think checking here is all right. But I can't help myself, and I'm just going to bet a little more than half the pot. He loves to chase, but he doesn't play back when he misses on flops. So I feel like I've been folding to him more than his optimal pre-flop, and he folds more than his optimal on the flop. So he steals from me pre-flop, and I steal from him on the flop. Just in general, this session you've seen me make some big river bluffs that I don't always find every session, but it's worth talking the hands out in your head and looking for those spots. One of them I think was really clever, and the other one I think was a little risky, but that's how I gamble. That's when I gamble. I don't like this hand. I love ace deuce 3-4. What a great low draw. But pairing the deuces makes it worse. Having the 5 in your hand just kind of makes it less likely that you'll even make a low. Blocking my own low draws. Well, there you have it, folks. Telling you I hate deuce deuce, and I get a set with the nut low and a little flush draw and a straight draw. So even when I don't like my hand, I'm lucky. So how do we want to play this? I think pot is okay, but I've been bluffing a lot with $200 bets, so I'm just going to do a little $200 bet. Stay balanced one time. And I'm never checking, which I'm sure that there's GTO strategies where you check, but he's just going to have so many draws in his hand, in his range, that I just don't want to give free cards ever. I think I would maybe check with top set, with the same low in top set, or the ace high flush draw. But there's just no need for me to give him free cards when my draws are vulnerable, when my high hand is vulnerable. I'm just going to limp in here with my ace deuce 4. I like this hand a lot. Suited ace, ace queen jack, some decent high cards. So just limping in. The stacks are getting smaller, so I'm not as worried about controlling the pots sizes. And I was kind of thinking this is what he was going to do. When I limp in, he's going to repot, and I could re-raise him here to punish him, but I don't even think that's important, to be honest. I think my hand is a little bit disguised, and just kind of let him take the betting lead and just fire off, and I will choose the flops where all the money goes in when he's doing that, when he's just firing. And this, of course, is an example of one of those flops. I got the wheel draw, ace deuce 4, I got top pair, and I have the nut low. So I think just calling here is fine too, but this guy, I think he's on tilt. I think he's ready to blow up and just jam it in. He's going to call, and it's just going to be up to the poker gods, the run out. I feel like I'm ahead. If he folds, I'm actually happy with that, because all I have is a pair of eights. Oh, he's got a set of eights. Wow. But I make my straight. Oh, he made a bigger straight. I didn't even see that. Well, it's good to have the nut low locked up. Oh, I actually thought I had scooped him with the wheel, but he had that bigger straight. Oh, but that's all right. Another one of those situations where I've got half locked up and he's just praying to get his own chips back. So if we get in enough of those situations, eventually I'm going to have it all.